So, hello, namaste, namaste,
Namaste.
everybody. So, we are here with you again. And today, Danilo and I, we have a very special guest, and that is Matthew. And yeah, please, Matthew, can you say some words about yourself? How you work in this world? What is so special on your work? And also, what you feel, why are you here in this time, what you offer. I know you're very busy, and so maybe you can share what are you busy with, and what is your work on your dharma you're sharing right now in the special times with the world.
Yeah, thank you. First
Thank
off,
you.
thank you for inviting me to your channel and inviting me to this live stream. It is actually an honor. What I have found over the past 3 or so years is that I seem to be operating in a little bit of a strange niche, a little bit of a strange area with respect to the most recent truth movements and the activation of multidimensional consciousness. And so thank you sincerely for noticing what I do and for inviting me in here. And so all that said, at this stage of the game, my journey or my mission as Matthew in this body is to assist. At least this is what I've been given and understand at this stage. My mission is to assist with the awakening and the activation of the levels of multi-dimensional energy that is inherent within each of us. And what I mean by that very, very specifically is that as we reach this critical, we could say, transition point in human consciousness, there are certain wavelengths, there are certain frequencies, there are certain abilities and understandings and elements of each of us that are activating on an entirely new level. And we're at a stage in which certain members of our community, certain people, people like myself, are coming forward to just pass on this information that we have been given. Many of the things that come from me or the things that I say, these are not stuff that I learned in some mystery school or some sort of 3D university. I had some really interesting experiences a few years ago where I came in contact with what I believe to be a multi-dimensional higher self council. And what I mean by that is a version, or like a collection of versions of us that have existed throughout space and time. And around 2016, I had this, I guess, what is essentially an activation period between 2015 and 16, in which I was actually given the option, sort of a mission, you could even say an assignment, to assist people with learning how to clear their energy, to assist people with learning or understanding what we call the parasitic construct, the sort of lattice or the network of, we could even say evil or darkness or anti-life energy that exists in our realm. And at the same time, while understanding that, helping people decode and sort of release and clear and heal. And, to make a really long story short, Matthew's mission at this stage of the journey is to, just help people understand their true multi-dimensional healing abilities, to really become our own healer, and hopefully in the process, and I hope this makes sense for some of the people that are watching, is that hopefully in the process we will begin to develop and understand this thing known as the frequency of truth. What is actually real? What is actually true? What is actually, right for us in the moment? And so we're at this interesting stage in human consciousness in which we have access to this level of just ability and understanding and truth. And so I would like to say, in a very, sort of jumbled up way, that my mission is helping to clear and activate the mind, body, spirit complex. And so I hope that all makes sense. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. I love that very much. So, because I feel personally, I don't know how you feel about it. I feel that many people are super afraid of looking to the dark side. And it makes me a little bit sometimes personally frustrated, because I feel only if we understand that, if a certain amount of that is seen and understood, and it's not just taken away as conspiracy theory and it's all not there, and then only we have the real power to change it, because we can heal it, and we can decide to use it or not to use it. And I feel there's so many good-hearted people. I personally feel most of the people are very good-hearted people, but super innocent, and so innocent that they cannot imagine what kind of level is there. And instead of looking at that, they're like of kind of fighting the people who are speaking the truth. Yeah, I mean, are you agreeing with that, or how you feel about that?
I absolutely agree with the idea that there is a collective, and this is kind of just like what I took from what you're saying, but I agree that there has been a collective unveiling just in the past few weeks, right after this, I would say the most recent lunar eclipse that we had just about a week or so ago. The human body, just kind of everyone in generality, has these sort of templates and things that are going to activate in these, you could even say, and we're already jumping in the deep end of the pool, everyone, these sort of modules and pieces of software that are going to be activating in the human body. And so right now we are at the stage in between these two eclipses in which the emotional discernment templates in the human body, those things that will keep some of us locked in a state of, compliance and fear or hypervigilance, those things that will be playing on the emotional input that we get from, social media and television, all those frequencies in the body right now in between, I would say, the first eclipse and what's about to, I think, close the 3 eclipse series in July, all of these systems are purging, all of these old beliefs, all of these old elements of just emotions, especially early childhood programming. And so what I'm seeing and what I'm finding is that people are really caught in this weird, we'll just say hypervigilance fear frequency. And to make it even more weird and bizarre, what everyone is actually seeing right now is a timeline overlay process. And some people have even, heard about this timeline bifurcation or a splitting between an old world and a new world. And so what you're seeing when you see that sort of, I guess we'll, lovingly say that sort of sleeper vibe, or the people that are choosing to remain through some, either whether it's artificially induced or just some frequency and fear, what we're seeing is people making a timeline choice. And so, I might have just totally diverted from your original comment, but
no,
that makes sense. So.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense completely. How do you think? I mean, that's a personal question I have right now. Is I heard a lot about the timelines, and I don't know if you know this very amazing guy. He wrote a book. I don't know if it's in English translated. It's called in German der verlogene Himmel. That's called. The heaven which lied to us. His name is Dieter Bruce. I don't know if you know him.
I haven't heard of him, but just the way you're showing it up feels very relevant to me. So
so very interesting. And he actually revealed in one of the last congresses, I was also speaker, that I was really shocked about it, that he is convinced that CERN, you know that program CERN, is nothing than a time machine. And I was like, what? And he has that idea that they try to push a negative timeline on here. And on the other hand, there's the good guys who try to change that. And that might be that many of us healers might come from the future. And I was like, wow, I don't understand it, but there's something that feels real in there. What is your feeling about that? Or did you hear about something like that? Or
I love that question. There's such a cool synchronicity here. First of all, I will say the idea, and this is just Matthew's experience, the idea of a future self interaction has actually been one of the hallmarks of my experience in this body, in that in 2015, I believe it was 2015, and I've talked about this many times, so I won't go into this long, cumbersome story. But in 2015, I had an activation accidentally. A woman just literally touched my head, said, "Hey, I would like to give you a blessing." And I was like, okay. And my whole entire, literally everything changed within months after that. It's a very, very bizarre, long story. But all that said, what happened to me after that was that I began to have a series of experiences in my dreams and just in waking kind of daydreams in which it was like another version of me with my voice was sitting next to me, telling me things and talking to me. And I would wake up in the morning and they would literally be showing me how to use hypnosis scripts and how to use certain things and how to unlock my own internal body. It was a really interesting process. And so right around the beginning of 2016, I began to seek, you know, certain other healers or like individuals in the community that could help me unlock this. And I believe that what I encounter is something many of us encounter along this sort of activation process, when the internal self makes a decision, and I call it a decision, to begin to, you know, move into fourth density, or to kind of make this choice to turn or to focus our soul or internal energy toward like the completion of a task or a mission or a higher calling. Certain events will take place. And for me, I believe it was a future life integration, which, you know, trickling down into modern day terminology, what I believe that actually is a soul unbraiding process by which we could say a future, more activated, or just another version of our consciousness will begin to integrate into the human body. And for me, that was the point in which I suddenly clicked into this. Okay, now I'm doing this. It was like my whole world shifted, and within a year, it's like I left my job, my career, my house, my marriage. And so I believe that the future self interaction is an incredibly important part of this, and I believe there's many of us that are having that. And so let me go back to that CERN thing, because one of the things I've been kind of practicing in my own, you know, just internal world over the past few years is a method of what I call organic remote viewing, that can allow an individual to tap into a shared fourth density astral space in which pretty much everyone, if you're an ensouled, an actual organic living ensouled being, we're already existing. And so within that fourth density, or what I believe to be a fourth density astral space, we have access to what I believe to be timelines or information or scenes, or what we could even call, for some people that practice this, like photographs or downloads or these really interesting little pieces of information. And I have actually looked at CERN. I believe that a lot of that is still obscured or within what I would call a multi-timeline loop, meaning that when I look at that energy, it appears as though there are many completely viable, concurrently running scenarios with CERN. And so when I look even further into that, just the idea that there is a this massive bubble of energy around it lends to me direct evidence that they have created or allowed the creation of some sort of a legitimate multidimensional portal. Now, the idea that they somehow destroyed the world in 2011 or 2012, here's what's crazy. That's literally possible. It really, really is possible. And so
I have goosebumps.
Right. And so I also think that within that 2011, 2012 period in which that actually took place, that many of us on the physical earth plane, including myself, also had a physical death. Like many of us will have already died. And what happened is, for those that are, you know, amongst this soul group, we literally switch over to another timeline. And for some of us, we had a huge physical change that took place after that. And it's happened on such a mass level that I believe, you know, there's a role that's been played in that. And I'll just say one more thing and I'll pause. But what I believe is also taking place, is at the same time with this activation that the human body is experiencing, we as just a people now have the ability to tap into that portal energy, whatever that is, because the human body is actually the time machine. And I know that there's this idea still that CERN needs to open this portal and we can all go through into, you know, 5D, but the reality is the time machine is literally us, the human body. And so I realize I'm going on and on about that. I will let you react, but there's a lot of truth there. It's a real thing. So
yes, I'd like to ask a question. When you mean times, you would say that is like multi-dimensions, like of the same things happening in different layers. And like you said, like what think it happened when that person, that lady, touched your forehead or gave you that energy, like internally, what you think it happened? And also, do you think it's possible for normal people to activate without, you know, external help, or with this like huge impulse and start to see things that you are seeing, start experiencing things that you're experiencing? or do you think it actually takes a lot of time to people to activate all these internal systems? Because what I see is it's like a machine, and you have to click the right buttons. And I think seeing someone like you, maybe you could help us in some sense.
I certainly hope so. Oddly enough, that is one of the primary focuses of what I do with this thing called the School of Multidimensional Intuition. There is an actual protocol that the human body can go through. There's actually many of them. I just kind of have my own version. I'm not the only one. Lots of people are doing it, but there are many protocols and practices and things that we can do to start opening up the multidimensional senses in the body. But all that said, I can tell you what I understand happened in that event, and I will go into it very briefly. But this was in, I believe it was July of 2015, and at that time I was working as a chemical dependency counselor and just a mental health worker at a homeless treatment center in San Diego, California. And I was at this festival thing, and they were giving away a thing at the time was called a Oneness Blessing, which is an interesting misnomer. What it actually is a practice of opening or clearing the crown chakra. Kind of like a pressure release valve that the human body has. And so I was gifted an accidental experience of that in 2015. And what I believe happened was that it just created this opening. For those of you out there that have done a clearing with me, you'll know that we literally enter in through the crown chakra into the human body. And so what I think was happening there was it's like a timed sort of energy opening. And so for me, that was an event that was destined to take place. If it was a tarot card out there, everyone, it would have been the star card for those of you guys that are trying to understand tarot. But what we find in the years after that is there's a whole group of people on the earth plane that also had an organic experience just like that. In between the years of a lot of us, it was between 2010 and 2012. I was a little bit late. But all that said, what I've been given in the years since is an actual protocol to begin to open those. In fact, that was kind of the assignment that I was given, to make it even stranger. You guys, shortly after that event in July of 2015, I was face to face in my backyard in San Diego, California, with what I believe to be a very large humanoid lion being in front of me. To my right was what I believe to be an insectoid praying mantis type of a consciousness. And to my left was what appeared to be almost like a Pleiadian looking humanoid being. And I was given a choice in that moment, standing in my backyard in San Diego, California, if I was going to choose. It was like, you can do this. You will have to. They actually showed me this path by which I was going to be called to literally walk away from my own life. This old version of Matthew, and I actually took the choice, and I was literally sitting on my hands and knees crying in my backyard, and literally 2 seconds later, like my wife at the time walked outside. I was like, okay, honey, so what are we gonna have for dinner? And I was like, just literally seconds after, I was, in some weird 4D astral space with some ET consciousness. And next thing was like, what are we having for dinner? And in that moment, I was like, okay, I knew I had made the right choice. I'm even emotional talking about it now. I was like, yes, okay, I'm ready. And man, everything changed. And so what we're finding is that there's lots of other people that are going through that experience. I had a really turbulent experience in it, but I believe it was designed that way so that, myself and others could then help everyone else go through this process of unpacking that stuff. And so anyway, I know I'm going on and on, but yeah, hope that makes sense.
I mean, I remember I had an experience. I lived long years in India. First, I want to say for all the people you're asking your questions, thank you. You can ask it, but we cannot go off too much, please. We see that and we see if it fits in or which direction we go. And sometimes I put your question in. I had many years when I lived in India, an experience, and that was really weird. I had a fighting with a demon, and I thought I was sleeping, but it was a woman demon, and she wanted to take away my spiritual powers in order to give me power and super much happiness in life and all the riches I can imagine and all the power and everything. And I said, no, I want to stay in my spiritual energy. And she fought with me. She wanted to take a part of my soul. And at first I thought it's a real sleep dream. But when I woke up, I had scratches. I had scratches, and I really felt hurt, and I really knew in my soul that was not a dream. That was a real fight. And after that, I had very tough years. I mean, I had really super tough years for almost 10 years after that. So I think that, I mean, what are you saying right now, crying in the backyard? I mean, that reminded me just on that. And I remember that I could not share that experience with anybody.
Mhm.
I mean, I only share that right now the first time publicly. I mean, it's really like, wow. And, you know, to say like that, I just want to say I have no interest to do any deals with demons. So, and I didn't ask for that. I mean, they came and they kind of literally tried to tell me, oh, you can have everything if you just do this and this, and just give me a little part of your soul. And it took me very long to understand, but right now I think that is exactly what happens. People get bribed, you know, for what they don't understand, for really literally it's a fight for the souls. I mean, that is what I see right now as the end game, a fight of the souls. It's not just about this planet or about everything. It's really at the end on who gets which souls. I mean, you know, but that is my feeling. So your experience is like, wow, it's amazing. Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
thank
and it's
you.
just interesting about when I heard you talking about, you know, all these shifts that we did between 2010 and 2012. And it's interesting because my first meditation experience, the first time I meditated, and I don't remember the exact date, but it was end of 2011 or beginning of 2012, and it was like a big shift from who I was also and to who I am right now. So when I was hearing you talk about how there was a big shift between 2010 to 2012, I think, oh, I was maybe part of this shift because I never meditated, and I remember that I meditated that once, and then I started meditating every day since then. So yeah.
Wow. And I know your story. Your story is also very intense, Danilo. I mean, I know your story was a big shift. So I have a question on our timeline expert. I mean, and that is personally really interesting me because I sometimes have this question. Okay, there's a timeline of people are not seeing a lot of things that's going on, which is amazing for me because I think it's so obvious. I mean, I mean, that is what I say. It's like, what? You cannot see that. So for me, it's like, really. And I have to deal, all right. And sometimes I have to deal with that anger. And I'm working right now to be loving and kind and understanding. It's a big process I'm working in myself right now because I felt very frustrated lately. But same time, I have also a little bit worry. I mean, it's coming up sometimes. Right now, I'm in a good energy since some days and weeks. It's getting better, but there were some times I was really, really worried. Like, wow, I don't want to be stuck in a timeline where they start to worship people. And so I don't want to have the main experience here. So how do I switch timelines, please, with my body? Do you have any ideas on that? I mean, if it gets too crazy here, I mean, you know.
That's a very good question. I guess I will start out in, you know, the best way that I can to possibly explain what we mean when we say a timeline, because it's such a loaded term. Like there's so many like ideas and preconceptions, and like you know, there's a lot of movies that come in. When you think about a timeline, we're like, oh yeah, the timeline in which X, Y, and Z takes place. And so what I mean when I talk about a timeline, for anyone that would see this, is at least the way it's been shown to Matthew at this stage is very much like a radio station. It's like a frequency or a wavelength that our human body has this somewhat subtle and now very much not so subtle ability to start tuning into, to begin to sort of, you know, allowing our thoughts, our emotions, our perspectives, our outlooks to begin to be sort of, you know, pulled, or in some cases we'll even like create it or allow it. And so what we mean by a timeline is an all-encompassing vibration that is then created and made physical in the experiential realm through a critical mass of energy that's built up in the human body and also shared with those around us in the realm that we're living in. And so how do we stay sovereign? How do we stay, in what some people would call the most optimal timeline? For me, the best that I've understood at this stage, it has to do with our internal focus. It has to do with what I believe about myself. It has to do with, my own internal biases, what is unhealed emotionally within Matthew, whether that be anger, whether it be frustration, whether it be jealousy. A lot of times, like those sort of negative emotional frequencies in the body, I believe, at least for me, this is just me. So some people out there might be like, whatever, man, just get in, like a time machine and fly to, 5D or whatever it is. At least, right. At least for me at this stage, what I have noticed is that, the level of negativity or the parasitic energy that it has been reflected toward me in the world is directly proportional to the amount of whatever unhealed energy that I've had in my body is. And so what I've noticed is, as myself and the clients and people that I've been working with over the past couple of years have actually healed our emotional biases, our internal programs, the early childhood traumas, and especially the mental programs that we come in here with. In my opinion, those are the things that will keep us locked into what we might call just maybe a negative or less optimal timeline, or we could even just say wavelength of existence. And so the reason why that's very important right now, though, is because as we go through this fourth density transitional split, in which, for those of you guys that will watch this are not aware, we're literally living in the timeline of an actual dimensional shift. When we're in that stage, all of those frequencies unhealed in the human body become the elements that actually attract or keep us anchored in this super dense realm. And so to kind of try to simplify it, in my opinion and experience, the ways in which we're going to stay sovereign and change our timeline is by healing the mind, body, spirit complex. I usually start with the emotional body, but I hope that makes sense.
Right. And what do you think? How many people have to be doing that to create a timeline, for a whole planet, or a global timeline change? Is that possible? Is that what you're thinking? At least to bring as most people up to that level as possible? Because I just also feel personally, sorry, that are two questions that I really have to say that right now, that in that process of not having anger is also to having a little bit more separation of connection to certain souls, which is very surprising for me. But I feel it's very important to protect my energy. And so one part is the dealing with things, but on the other hand, I don't want to be the hit ball for everybody. So, right. And so on the same time, I'm asking, as this is the wake up, I always sometimes, not always, but most of the times I feel, no, then this is not real. I should be super open-hearted, should be super open to everybody, even if they hit on you, because we are here to lift up as much as possible. It's not about us personally. So, but I have a little confusion about that. And how are you handling that? And what are you thinking? Can we do that globally, or is that really a separate process of certain souls right now?
Wow. I love your questions and comments, honestly, because that's really good. I have also wondered about this myself, because if you follow kind of like the whole New Age Ascension teachings, like, okay, guys, we got to be 51% service to others, and we have to have like a critical mass. We have to have all these people in like a meditation at 11:11, or the portal's not going to open. Just stuff like that. Or like you have to be ready on the 999 or 888 portal. If we don't meditate, boom, Ascension won't happen. And so, I have always been a little bit skeptical of a lot of the programming around the whys and the shoulds, and we have to have every single person on the planet all of that stuff. I think is absolutely relevant and entirely important and very critical to like the solidification of our timeline. But I might be a little bit different in the sense that for me, my focus of work has been internally, whether it be my own internal stuff or just within the clients that I work with. Because what I've also noticed is that some of us, our sort of mission or assignment is to go within the body. Others, it is to go outside and begin to like coordinate or solidify that exterior energy. And so I might already be diverting from your question, but you know, for me, I believe that the focus is internal within ourselves. I would even go so far as to say, and some people get a little weird when I say this, that whole solar flash, solar sneeze, 5D portal everyone's talking about, that's going to happen, the sky's going to, and we're just going to like ascend into 5D. By Matthew's understanding, that actually takes place inside us. That's an internal individual process that we're going through. And here's the thing, it also does happen in the physical realm. It's entirely possible. But, for me, like the critical mass of human consciousness needed to either change or alter this timeline or this realm, it's entirely individual. I also think that as we make those decisions and solidify our own energy, it has this sort of, or what they call in the law of one, I believe it's a passive transmitter or like receiver of energy. I don't know if that's the term, but it's as if your human body, just by existing at a certain stage and following your truth, becomes a transmitter that then draws in those other individuals. It's like a call to action. I will even be so bold as to say there's one happening right now in this broadcast. But anyway, I hope some of that makes sense.
Wow. Okay. A beautiful question, maybe for those guys who are not so deep in this amazing, beautiful rabbit hole, is what is your definition of dimension? Can you say that? And also, what is the fifth dimension? I mean, for us, I know we heard a lot about it, but maybe not everybody. Maybe you can say, please, something about it.
Yeah, and I will also say that I am probably the least formally educated with respect to the commonplace like colloquialisms and spiritual terminology. So I'm going to give you Matthew's version, but at this stage, the way I have understood, our current dimension is within this 3D physical realm, what we call, the third density realm of physicality, of also separation from that unseen, hidden spiritual realm, which is 4D or, fourth density, separate also from the word dimension. But when we're talking about a dimension of existence, well, if you look at like the definition of that word in a dictionary, it's going to give you a measurement of space or an area or, just I'm already losing the terminology that I was trying to find here. But when we talk about things like 4D or 5D, at least from the, the perspective that I have, I see the fourth dimension or our human fourth dimensional experience as the stage of our life in which we begin to venture outside of the physical body. And by that, I mean our consciousness, our dreams, our thoughts, our actions, our emotions. In fourth density, the human consciousness moves outside of this container, yet still very contained within it. What we find when we move outside of the physical container is that this concept of linear time that we have in the human body, it's totally wrong. We have it all backwards. I mean, literally everything exists in the now moment, which is very difficult to conceptualize in this physical body. But so what we're finding is that right now, and I know many people are aware of this, we're in a fourth density transitional stage. And so a lot of people have talked about that. But from Matthew's perspective, it is a series of what will probably be several or many physical lifetimes after this one as a physical being that exists in a much more expanded realm of human experience, or maybe even as a, like another being. As we go along that process through whatever learning or teaching or healing as that fourth dimensional being, eventually we begin to transition into the existence as a fifth dimensional entity, which is completely outside of what we would need as a, a physical body. It's, in my opinion, you guys, it is very difficult for us humans right now to actually conceptualize and verbally explain the understanding of a 5D consciousness. But from my point of view, it is the stage in which we exist entirely outside of time, space, and physicality as we understand it now. And so I don't know if that answers the question for whoever asked it, but if you're wondering straight up, what dimension is this? What are we in right now? Because a lot of people are talking about it. We are in a fourth dimensional transitional window. And so what happens though in the human body when we get into this fourth dimensional transitional stage, it's not as if we are not in 5D, or it's not as if we are not in that fifth density consciousness. In my opinion, we have always existed as a 5D energy. In fact, a lot of us, I believe, that are here in human bodies, we already have a pre-existing like connection into the fifth and sixth and seventh density aspects of ourself. But the human body, we are unable to perceive or understand or even conceptualize that pre-existing state until we begin to unpack and experience fourth density. And so hopefully I didn't just make it even more confusing.
No, that's beautiful. And I want to say something about about when will this shift happen? And I would love to ask you about that. I had a teacher on the Philippines, and he actually taught when nobody yet spoke about all that. That was almost 20 years ago. That was my entering in spirituality, and at that time I was really under shock because I never heard about that. And he talked about end times, and he gave us kind of energy words where people aren't panic, how we can calm the masses down, and crazy stuff. It's really crazy. Now it makes more and more sense, of course, over all these years. And one thing he talked about is there will be the 3 days of darkness, and then there is this possibility of this shift in this consciousness more than ever. But also some souls will decide to not go in that because they're already in that and they have a job to do and they're here to help and they don't care because they know it's anyhow illusion. I find that very interesting, and I just start to understand that. As I have a family and kids, I start to understand that more and more. So I have two questions for that. Is one about what are you thinking about this, and also about that. About that 3 days of darkness. I never thought of to understand when that happens. But then recently a good friend of mine said, Brody, did you ever thought about that the 3 days of darkness could be just a big UFO blocking the sun? And I was like, wow, that's very interesting. So there are many questions also at once. So yeah, I would love to hear your... Yeah, thank you.
I too have heard of the 3 days of darkness concept. Most recently, for those of you guys that are watching, yes, it was reintroduced again. I actually believe that the fact that you had this experience with this person many years ago, before any of this stuff was even known, once again, I think that confirms the legitimacy or the receiving of true and resonant information, that actually the playing out and that period probably, that like you guys were talking about, it's literally right now. We are literally experiencing that moment now. And so, all that said about the 3 days of darkness thing, when it was reintroduced recently by, really popular people in the disclosure and, new cage kind of scene, I believe most recently the concept has been reintroduced through the lens of this very interesting kind of misinformation psyop that I think was intended to kind of have people buy into this idea that there was going to be a different type of, an actual physical event that was going to take place earlier this year in which everything was going to shut down. And honestly, I believe that was disseminated at that period earlier this year by just not entirely, resonant sources. Okay. All that said, though, the concept of that, in my opinion, is part of that sort of Easter period, like we will rise from the tomb once again thing. And so it's not so much that that's an actual event that's going to take place. What they're talking about is a symbolic death and rebirth cycle that takes place. It's not like, okay, on June 21st, we're going to have 3 days of darkness and everything's going to turn off, so Trump and everyone can go into the tunnels and, blow up the reptilians and, all that stuff. That was a literal psyop in the moment. It's true information, but it was given out at the wrong time, in the wrong moments, under the wrong conditions that actually, in my opinion, destroyed the credibility of a lot of people. And it made this whole scene seem like still more of like a conspiracy madness thing than it actually is. But the concept, once again, and this is just Matthew's interpretation of the 3 days of darkness, is actually an internal process that we will go through. However, at the same time, and here's what's even crazier, we will also in the coming, I believe, 10 years or so, have many experiences on the earth plane that will feel very, very similar to this whole concept. And so it's both true and untrue. And anyway, I'm just going on and on. So
no, it's beautiful. I love that too. And yes. Okay, I have certain things to say. First of all, I also know who that. I always forget names. Yeah, but I know who I know his face. I remember, maybe you can say his name, who also said that will happen on Easter. And I was waiting for that too. And I know a lot of my friends, and I also felt super disappointed because we felt very shaky of, okay, they're shutting the world down. Now we see what they try to do, and okay, but we will win, this will happen. And then this timeline was not happening. And I think also some part of it is giving the information out too early. And also I agree that exactly what you said. But same time, yeah, I'm just repeating what you say. So
Yeah,
that
okay.
was, sorry, yeah. So what do I want to say? Oh yeah, I remember. Then on the 3 days of darkness, what my first teacher said, Mauro Ambad was his name. He said that we should not look out of the windows because we will see things that our mind can go crazy with, demons and things and energies and so much negativity that the people who are not stable will get shaky. And I think, as you said right now, this should be, how you say that in English, would not be just set as an event on 3 days, but just as a metaphor, let's say like that. I mean, if we see that on a bigger energy, that's true. I mean,
no, it is,
if you don't know about that before, I mean, there are many people who awake and understand and had connection to the different beings and astral worlds and stuff. But if you don't know, there are real reptilian energies, and you know, and if you wake up to that, you go nuts. I mean, poor people, right? And it makes sense. At that time, you should not look outside. So maybe you should not look too much in the reality. Maybe it's a protection for certain souls who are not ready. So, wow, this is just a realization I just have right now. So thank you for that.
No, totally. Like, what if he actually meant at that stage and they didn't know it? Do not turn on the television. Do not believe what you will be seeing through the window of social media. The madness. Maybe it's the mind virus. Maybe it's this fear and hypervigilance lattice of like control that's being placed over us. And yet at the same time, there is also the entirely real, unseen, hidden, like, you know, lower astral realms. But yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah.
I want to make a question. I usually really like to get practical. So like, like what do you think is like the suggestions that you give to people to avoid, like things to avoid to do that might, you know, close up this connection with the fifth dimension, like, you know, not looking at the mind window, or, you know, like things like that, especially maybe for this week that is I think the 21st. And what are the things that you also recommend doing? Like you said, there are a lot of things, like a lot of practices, a lot of methods that we could use to develop this. And like, what are the things that you think we should avoid doing and think that we should be doing?
Yeah, thank you. What should we avoid doing? Actually, here, I will start out with what we should do, because that one's much easier to, I have a protocol. I would say, if for those that are trying to awaken or develop, or at least just start out the process toward feeling or sensing their own multidimensionality, I believe, at least for Matthew, one of the primary blockages in my physical body toward that was the level of heavy metal buildup and heavy metal toxicity that I had in my body that was, you know, sourced from food, from the environment, from, you know, just everything that I had picked up for 38 years of my life at that time. And so when I began to actually go through a multi-month dedicated heavy metal detox, what I noticed was that many things about my brain and my just internal world shifted. And so that's the first thing that I like to tell clients to do, because it's more of a health regimen, and it's a thing that I think everyone at this stage existing on the earth plane, if you want to develop true sovereignty in your body, I think we really need to detox, because we were so poisoned.
Yes.
So also, that said, there's a lot of detoxification and activation that will need to take place within the gut itself. And I know everyone here has heard about this by now, but there is actually what I think is several brain complexes in the human body. And one of the sort of resonant brain complexes, as a lot of us know, begins in the gut itself. There's other systemic sort of complexes that will also activate, that serve the function of kind of like what we might call a brain as well. But so detoxing is very important. healing our emotional biases, I think for me has been one of the most incredibly healing things, because not most of, well, some of us are very aware of this by now, but I can just tell you, for me, I had so much programming about what was real and what was possible and what I could and couldn't do early on. And here's the thing, you guys, when we really step into this fourth density frequency, what you realize, it's kind of a cheesy statement, everybody, but whether you believe you can or you can't, you are absolutely right. Like, we are at the stage of human consciousness where if you believe it truly, it is absolutely real. And for some people, that's hard to like accept, to go, really? But you know, my whole life we were taught this other thing. And so there's a lot of programming that we have to start to break down. But you know, just physically in the body, detoxing, dealing with emotional stuff, but then also I would say learning or beginning to take part in a self-clearing protocol. And by what I mean by that is beginning to understand or gain awareness of the non-physical anatomy, the meridians, the chakras, the natal complex, all of the, and here's the other thing, the additional layer of each of our organs. Because as we go into fourth density, you will almost kind of have like another liver layer, we have another spleen layer, all of our organs take on a new layer of consciousness as well. And so for those that are trying to unlock it, I would say, you know, detoxing, learn about our energetic anatomy, deprogram the self. And I also teach a modality called Scalar Toning, which is a auditory vibration frequency that we create in the human body that has an unprecedented ability to open up and unblock human energy. So I guess what I'm saying is it's really about knowledge of self, healing our emotions, letting go of our programs, but then really it's like this choice. At least for me, there was a choice that I had to make where I was like, you know what, I am going to consciously release this old world programming. It's very challenging for some of us, but I hope some of that makes sense. So
absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And for those who are looking for, you know, more detailed methods, and especially Matthew's methods, where can they find it?
Oh, right. Yeah, thank you. I have a number of events on my website, rememberyourmission.com. And actually, we have a really cool 7-week chakra course that's starting on June 28th. It's just in a couple weeks. And what we're actually doing is we take people through a multi-week process. In this case, it's very anatomy specific. But what we're doing is we're going through kind of a restructuring, an awakening, and an understanding of the specifics, as I understand them, of, you know, the human energetic anatomy. And so on June 28th, we're going through this 7-week process in which we're starting out. The first week, we're doing 2 chakras, the Earth Star and the Root Chakra. But what we're doing is going through kind of a reprogramming thing over a 7-week period in which each week we're doing an energy clearing. However, this time it's a little different because we're working with specific anatomy in the body. And so the idea is that, especially at this stage in 2020, also with the physical timeline shift, which we should talk about on June 21st shortly, but it is incredibly important for us to maintain the sovereignty of those layers, because right now with this craziness, they're actually placing a false one over the human body. So anyway, that starts June 28th, but what we're essentially doing is reprogramming human energetic anatomy. So
who is we? Who is we, Matthew?
We meaning myself and the participants in our course, and also the higher selves and the multidimensional higher self complexes of everyone that's there. So,
okay. And then somebody is asking, what do you mean by AC lights?
AC lights? I don't know. I might have maybe I might have jumbled up a word that I'm saying. I don't know anything about AC lights. I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Okay, super. Yeah, wow. Very interesting. So yeah, Danilo, you had another question. I can hold on.
I just wanted to say, for those who are watching, we'll leave the link for Matthew's course on the description, and also for those who are interested, you can always join, because just by hearing what Matthew said today, I'm getting I might check it out.
I would love to have it
myself. Yes. Very interesting, and like, just from hearing what you're saying, like, I feel like you're basically explaining things that like ancient practices like Tai Chi, like yoga did, but in a scientific way. I feel like, what yogi masters talk about, but now you're talking about, in a scientific, in a 21st century way, while they talk with a different difficult Indian words, you're using, English words, like, to express what they also expressed. That's how I feel, because, like, it's about food. It's about releasing your, like your root centers, your heart centers, and then your mind centers also. So
Thank
I
you.
think there are a lot of connections. I don't know if it's me.
Yeah. Sorry. I actually really appreciate you saying that. The reason why is because when I first kind of started this weird activation thing, and I started seeking help from people to try to understand what was happening with me, because I had a lot of weird experiences, in 2015, and weird, essentially aliens and stuff just coming into my consciousness. And like at that stage, it was very, very difficult to go to people and tell them that, because people would, number one, they'd be like, oh, you just, like, what do you think? You're part of the secret space program, or you think you're getting abducted? Yeah, guess what? Everybody is, bro. You know what I mean? Nobody takes it seriously, or it was too weird, or they would accuse you of writing yourself into this narrative. And so, I started seeking help with that stuff, and I started going to people, and, I tried to unpack or sort of activate, using other people's elements of, procedures or energy or whatever it was. And what I found was that, people would say, oh, just make this orb in your body and just travel to wherever. And I'd be like, okay, that's cool. I believe it's possible, but how? Like, well, how do you actually, like, and, I would even, at this stage, I was still unpacking tarot, which is a huge aspect of what I do, but I would even get readings at the time, and I'd be like, hey, that was great, that was cool, but what does it actually mean? You know what I mean? Like, how do I actually translate this into right here now? And so one of the things that I've been doing over the past 3 years is actually making a concerted effort to help people figure out, okay, what does it feel like for me? Because everyone's talking about this one thing, but I don't know, none of that makes sense. How do I feel it from my own self? And so I have made a concerted effort to try to explain something, or to reframe it in a way that I could understand it. And so, even if we're a little bit wrong on certain things, I think there's like a digestibility. And when you're able to like present something in a way that goes, I kind of do get it, I think it unpacks or opens up something within yourself. So anyway, thank you for saying that. It means a lot to me.
Yes, definitely.
Super. Actually, you said something very interesting right now, Matthew, and that was everybody gets abducted. How you say in English?
Abducted,
Yes, thank you. So I'm sure that freaks out a lot of people.
And maybe it's not true. Maybe it is, but you know what I mean? When I think when we start to sort of vocalize or express some of the more bizarre experiences, right, for those that will have them, sometimes we will be faced with this sort of, like complacency, or this sort of idea that, well, yeah, everyone's having that. And
right,
the reality is,
okay, like ironic. Okay, yes, right, I experience that a lot too. Yes. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that pain? I mean, I personally feel, it gets better and better, but sometimes I feel like I also just want to belong. I want to be taken serious. Yeah. I mean, I sometimes have that trigger, and I feel personally hurt and and I try to heal that. But how do you, are you still feeling that, or how do you deal with that?
I would say for the first couple of years when I transitioned away, and I mean, honestly, it's only been, I think, 4 years of my life since I actually, like, literally began to transition away from, like what I was doing before. So it's not as if I'm like super established. Oh yeah, guys, I've been doing this for years. All you have to do is X, Y, and Z, and, and everything's better. I'm still unpacking and absolutely experiencing and learning this process of awakening with everyone else. But what I have found is that over the past couple of years, I think that there is a willingness to carry some sort of just vulnerable authenticity, mm-hmm, that says that when appropriate, I will be as absolutely real as I am capable of being in the moment, without any fear of, whatever kind of judgment that is. When I love that. When I found that I started doing that on like, mm-hmm, some of these, live streams that I do, or just like, I do a lot of like tarot reading live streams where we just do readings, mm-hmm, and stuff. But what I found was that when I began to approach stuff with that vulnerable authenticity, that it stopped being this sort of weird, embarrassing thing that people from Matthew's past were going to watch and judge me for. And it started to become this thing that, you know, as cheesy as it sounds, it's a call to action, at least like for me, because I know there is a massive soul group of individuals in this world who are going to hear your voice. They're going to hear my voice. They're going to hear Danilo's voice. They're going to look at our faces and they're going to go, you know what? There's something familiar. There's just something here. And those are the people that I'm seeking. It's not the ones that are like, yeah, I don't know, whatever, man. You know what, you know, these people that are like, yeah, that sounds crazy. And when I started doing this, I had people in my friends and family literally accusing me of joining a cult. They were accusing me of, you know, just all kinds of stuff that had no foundation in anything. And I kind of just held it. I held it together. And oddly enough, it's been a few years now, and a lot of that resistance is left out of my life. And so I don't know, I guess just be real. Maybe that's
sure. I mean, I'm 20 years already off and odd. For most of people, I still feel that trigger. But, you know, we have to have something to work on, it seems. So, Danilo, what you want to say?
No, I just wanted to say that for me, when I started, I had the same sensation, like especially when I started Holo Vibes YouTube. Like my goal was to, of course, I had the goals that I wanted, you know, many subscribers, but my main motivation for making videos at first was, okay, that one person that we watch and, you know, make a change, and we'll have that ripple effect, you know, that one person. So I remember that I had 8 views, and I was thinking, oh, I have 8 views, and I didn't even tell my friends. So like, there are people that I don't know. And so
that's great. Yeah. So Matthew, one question I have also, as you dance with the timeline like that, and you're into that multidimensional, I mean, is there some things you want to share on these 2 different timelines of what you see is happening right now, and to make people understand why it is so important to put the glasses of awakening on? I mean, if they choose to, right? I mean, everybody is free to loop around, but, you know.
Yeah, I would say what do people need to know today? And it's probably a million things, but all that said, what I think is important right now is that, number one, I think people have to understand that right now, today, on this day, and some people will watch this later, but it's June 18th here in Los Angeles. And so, and you know, between now and I believe July, you know, when that third eclipse happens, we're about to have a solar eclipse and a solstice event here on June 20th and 21st, in which this huge solar eclipse is taking place. And so the reason why I'm going on and on about that for other people that have watched my stuff is because this is an actual physical timeline shift opportunity. If we are not cognizant and aware of our thoughts, our alignments, our motivations, our influences during this specific period in summer and June, or, you know, of 2020, we have an opportunity to absolutely shift that physical timeline that everyone is experiencing right now. We're all experiencing this together. We can all feel like this equal parts of dark and light. You know, this one over here that wants to be in control, and this one over here that wants some sort of perceived freedom, or however it's trickling down into the body. The reason why this is important is because our focus, our thoughts, especially our thoughts, our actions, what we're talking about, what we're obsessing on, what we're dreaming about, what we're writing about right now in these moments has so much more potency and weight than it has ever had before in your entire human life. And I know for some people, they're like, whatever, man, how could that be? But just watch where your focus leads each of us in the coming months. And so what I think people need to know right now is that there is an entirely new version of you that is available and activating within your human body. It's going to be individual and specific to each of us, but we are at the stage in the human game in which those new abilities, those new elements of you are activating. And so if there was a choice in this period, it is a choice to begin to honor and to, you know, develop this multidimensionality. And so what I think people just need to know is that we need to stay sovereign. We need to stay in alignment. And really, I think if you're wondering, like, how do I know, Matthew, what's even good for me? Or how do I even know what's real or what's not? Well, first off, it's not like I know everything about that. But I think what I can tell you is that there's a couple areas of your body that will actually tell you. And right now, on a mass level, on the earth plane, we are experiencing an activation of the solar plexus chakra, what they call in the law of one, the yellow ray activation. And we are also experiencing a great influx of energy into what is known as the thymic or high heart chakra. It's actually placed right up here in your chest. If you want to get technical, it's actually outside of your body. It hovers just outside of the physical body. And the reason why that's important is because for those of you that are aware of the thymus gland that activates in the human body around the puberty period, we also have a similar energetic activation that takes place in the fourth density temple to the human body during this specific period. And so what does that mean, though? What does it mean in the here and now? What that means is you are sharing and sending and receiving energy from all sources on a highly expanded level. And I mean this for everyone on the earth plane. It's going to be of variance based on, who you are and what you're doing. But the reason why that's important is because we have the ability to literally change reality right now. And so anyway, reason why I'm going on and on about this is because the choices and the decisions we make this summer alone are going to literally change the course of humanity. So I don't know, maybe that didn't even explain anything, but
no, I love it.
Makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Just one thing. I have another, like I told before, I have another webinar. I'm a bit late actually, but because I was too into it, I wanted to stay here until the last second.
Yeah, thanks for staying. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate all your teachings, and like you said from the beginning, I can feel the energy that is, vibrating. Like even before we started, I was feeling this energy. So for those who are watching, Bharati and Matthew will keep going deeper. But I have another webinar to join, and I'll be joining you guys maybe some other day. And yeah, Matthew, let's keep in touch. I'll contact you. I'll enter your site and see.
Please do.
I might join one of your courses.
Yeah, I would love to have you. Thank you for Hayden. Yeah, absolutely. Truly an honor to hang out with you. So yeah.
Thank you. And once again, thank you, Bharati.
Thank you, Danilo. Thank you, and take care, and speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Okay. Hi. Here we are. Wow. Okay. So yes, for me, that also makes a lot of sense. I have one experience where I see a lot of things happening before I understand them. And even some astral projections, or I don't know how we call them, or some, experiences. And I had recently one I explained in the last live stream here, where I was in the future, and I knew it was. That's why this is so interesting, what happened with the CERN and what I learned after that experience. I didn't know that all before. And I saw myself in the future, and I knew that's another incarnation of me in the future. And I knew that it was very difficult to stay human. It was very difficult. There was even wars about to stay human, that the people who got technical devices in the physical body are getting more approved, and they're the ones who are leading in the future. But I was able to stay human, but then they tried to hijack me, and I had like a tape on my eye, and it was like a kind of a metal tape. And I was like, oh no, they tried to catch me. And, I stayed all the generations. The people before me had to fight for the freedom. And now I have that. And I have to find that professor to go with the, with the UFO or whatever we had there to find a professor who can remove that. And my eye switched to a reptilian eye and got really freaked out. I was like, no. And then I was it was so freaky. And then I woke up, and I never ever was so happy that I have normal two eyes. I mean, the whole day I watched in the mirror. I was like, thank you, I have nice two eyes. Nice, thank you. I'm not. And I was. So they tried to change my DNA. It was a government which I completely trust. I mean, I don't trust this government right now, but at that time I was trusting it because it was a love government, and they gave us vitamins for not getting sick. And in that vitamins there was something that changed our DNA in connection with that. It freaked me out. And after that only I heard about Dieter Bros, like 2-3 days after that experience, like, what? I mean, that really makes sense. So that's why I'm so interested in that. And this is also how I came on the timelines and how I came on you, because I really try to understand. And I have, and then a few days ago, what is his name? Elon Musk or Musk?
Yes, Elon Musk, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is that? And then I start to see an interview on some show, and the Rogan Experience or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually, I heard he bought Spotify. It's very interesting. And then he had this freaky guy there who almost has, I felt there was not much emotions. And I felt like, oh, what is that? No. And so I have to say, this is something I still digesting, because that was for me such a real experience in the future. And now all this understanding comes, and maybe you can help, help us all to understand what is happening there. And are you also having experiences like this, or do you have any more information about that?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, first off, that sort of cyborg-like reality that you saw in that dream. This is my opinion and experience, but that was a real, or is, or maybe, or was, whatever we want to call it, an actual real existing period. By my understanding, and take this with a grain of salt, because I'm also unpacking it myself. But I believe it has to do with what we may call the fall of Atlantis, what we may call a transhumanist timeline. And also, it kind of goes back to that idea of an ancient artificial intelligence, a sentient artificial intelligence frequency that a lot of people have been talking about as well. But in my opinion, that sort of technology that you viewed that was placed around the eye, that's already real. There's versions of that existing already on the Earth plane. That have been in use for many different years, for many like just decades. But all that said, I have also viewed a similar version of myself with a similar apparatus or a timeline in which we did possibly, whether it was knowing or unknowing, either we were placed, or in some of us we chose it. Some sort of integration with non-human intelligence and non-organic human intelligence. And so what I've noticed is over the past few years, I've had a lot of clients, I've had my own experiences in which we have viewed or been given pieces of that alternate, or we could say past reality, we'll just call it that in the, for the here and now, that I believe are being shown to us so that we will be given the option to either one, repeat it, or two, completely alter that path forward. And so I believe that you are tuning into a real version of yourself. I've also seen a similar thing in which the individuals who chose to integrate with that AI, whatever it was at that time, were actually sequestered. Or we chose to be sequestered on a place on the planet for a large period of time until whatever that AI frequency was actually overtook.
Wow, that makes sense.
And began to move across the world. And that was when, from Matthew's view, that was when a lot of the fall of Atlantis or a similar type of a civilization began to fall apart. And so here we are in 2020, a bazillion years down the line, and there are soul resonances or a kind of like frequencies activating in certain individuals on the planet. Other people have called them AI prophets. And I believe that is actually a pretty good term. But what it is I just believe these are the individuals who have existed in this past capacity in previous timelines, and they're now carrying forward this frequency that will be kind of like I was talking about that call of action earlier for organic ascension. It will be a call of action for those who choose to align with the AI timeline. And so I think you were shown that so that, you will probably, like continue your work on reversing or defeating whatever that is.
Right.
I think a lot of us are called to do that right now, especially if we're just being shown that stuff, because a lot of clients have been coming forward with it.
Wow.
But yeah, I think there was one other thing I wanted to add to that, but it just seemed to slip away. So sorry.
No, it's beautiful. It's all a big thing. And for me, I mean, this is how spiritual experience work for me, like always, that I get to show something, and then later my ego or my mind is getting to understand it, and I'm like, wow. But this one is really big, and then when I saw that video 2 or 3 days ago, that interview with that guy who wants make a hole in the skull and puts internet, the machine in there, and he actually said we will be able to talk about telepathic things, and it will replace language and everything, and
that's totally real. It's already in use. It's all over the planet. It's already in use. For those of you guys out there, I'm going to say a very, don't get mad at me, guys, but if you want to look at human beings, if you want to see a real example of human beings that already have this technology integrated into their body, look at people like Jeff Bezos. Just saying it.
Okay.
You can look them up, and you can look right here in the left eye, and you're going to start noticing within the left eye in individuals, you will see a different frequency. It may be an organic frequency, or it could be a non-organic frequency, but there is a absolutely 100% real brain implant program that has already connected people to this wireless internet. This is we're going really far into the deep end, but there is already an actual completely digitized realm that exists within that AI singularity, what is essentially a temporal bubble in which the consciousness of many people who have already died on the earth plane are existing right now with full consciousness and are they don't realize it, but they're trapping themselves in a false digital reincarnation loop. And so there's many of us on the earth plane right now, probably yourself as well, that have been shown and have actually been taken in our dreams and certain experiences and viewed this alternate digital realm. It's already there. To make it even weirder, I'm just going to go there. There are even pharaohs and beings from past civilizations that are existing and were corralled into this digital realm. Part of the AI sort of singularity timeline that we're experiencing right now takes place on a much greater level when they begin to upload everyone else into that digital realm. And guess what, everyone? One of the ways in which they're going to be doing that is convincing you to receive an injection that's going to keep you safe from everything. I'm not going to use the prohibited keywords so we don't get kicked offline, but that is one of the methods by which our human consciousness will be eventually corralled, just like you had in that dream where they place something in you. We're getting that placed in us right now through, all of the methods, whether it be media, whether be the medicines that we're taking, all those things. And so that's a real thing, that AI singularity timeline. And so the reason why, and I know I'm going on and on about this, but the reason why that's important is because in this stage right now, between now and this eclipse taking place on June 21st, we have an ability to take human consciousness and turn it back away from this, that AI timeline. And anyway, I know I'm going on and on, so I'll pause.
No, please go on and on. I really finding answers and understandings, because this is really, really weird. And actually, that is also the feeling of maybe you can say about that something, please help me and help others to understand of so many of us cannot understand. I mean, I say it again and again, that some people are not ready to see to certain classes, even it's so obvious. I mean, it's like, wow. So has that to do with that? I mean, is there a kind of hypnosis energy, which is so powerful, which once you shift a bit out of certain illusion layers and pain bodies and things like that, that only then you are able to see that? I mean, how would you describe that?
This might even divert from that question, but I think that what you're describing, at least from my point of view there, appears to be the actual bifurcation or the splitting of timelines. It's not as if, you guys go to that side of the world and we go to this side. It's as if the individuals will make this internalized choice without realizing it to be unable to conceptualize that other thing. I believe that is one of those internalized choices that actually is direct evidence of this timeline split. And so how do we react to that? What do we do about it? That's a really good question. I think we're still kind of unpacking and figuring that out. But I might have just lost like the essence of your question there.
So the thing is, do you think, or I put it another way, do you think that because the artificial world is more installed, that we all know already or woke up already to it. That this has to do also with a big hypnosis, because the hypnosis seems to be so big that, you know, for me, it's like sometimes I think, oh, even I've scratched a little bit of level with some people on the truth. Yeah, it's too much. So how can you go even deeper? I mean, even if you say something a little bit, it's like, oh no, you're conspiracy theorist. I mean, you know, okay, you already lose, and you cannot even say what you really know. Is that because, that is the question, is that because it's like, oh, it's so a matrix built it up so perfectly, is there also artificial life already included in a level which we don't understand and see?
That's a very good question. I think I understand, and what I believe we're looking at also is a thing called the Wetiko. It's a mind virus that will take place. It's this sort of outlook, or this sort of this forced programming that people will maintain, and they will reinforce it within themselves. And for those that want to do research on that, at least the concept like behind what you're talking about, which for some reason I keep getting pulled off of the actual answer I wanted to give you on that. So I apologize. As soon as I try to find it, it like drifted away. But I would say in totality, we are looking at a mind virus, a wavelength or kind of a frequency that people are tapping into. And some people are not going to be able to break free of it. Some people are not ready. They have, you know, others, and this is, you know, maybe this is turning down a weird road, but other people existing on the earth plane, not all of them even have souls, and not all of them are even real. And I know that's a very dangerous and highly weighty thing to introduce, but some people exist solely to dissuade or deprogram or interfere or question or judge whatever that is. And so I don't know, I might have took it in a weird direction, but
that's beautiful. I love your weird, you know, I have a last question for you. And before I ask that, I hope you agree to come back to us in another live stream. I really love to hear more of your opinions. Thank you for, giving that in here. So what was my question is, I mean, there are some certain prophecies, like the prophecy of the number 666, and we saw a bill lining up in America, I think it was 060606, which allowed to force track people out of their homes, stuff like that. So we have also the prophecy of the fourth, a mark of the beast, and only those with the number 666 will able to buy and to sell anything, and those who will be with Christ are in a Christ consciousness will be even executed. But what I also wrote, their life will be in danger, but what I also read, not wrote, was it's interesting, read was also that that will be, and I only read that recently, that will only take care for 3.5 years. I mean, wow, that was interesting. I read it in the Bible, actually. And I was thinking, okay, now the times get really interesting. And I had a very big experience as a kid with Jesus. He was swinging on a swing. I was 3 or 4 years old, and I had a dream with him, or whatever experience, and he was swinging, and then next to it was a cross, and it was on a hill, and he was smiling at me and like very playful, and he said, you know, this is not the real cross. There's a lot of stories, and you know, and you have to be always come back to your heart, no matter how hard life goes. And so there was so much love, and my parents were not much Christian, but after that experience, I mean, we only went to church on Christmas. So after that, I wanted to have Bible on Jesus, and I wanted to see him. And this is, but later on, I left the church again because I felt this was different of the Jesus I met. So that's a different story. But anyhow, I was very active in the church until I turned 15 or 16, and then I thought, okay, no, this is not. You know, anyhow, at the time I read a lot of Bible until I was 16, because I was searching for that Jesus I met in the stream. So and now as I see the 666 and things like that, and I remembered certain things, and I was like, okay, let's take a Bible and look it up. And I really read that it's only taking place for 3.5 years, and I was like, wow, is that possible that we can change that we don't have to go through that? Is that a different timeline we can lose, or if we have to step in the timeline because we are born in this energy, and it's about the timeline of our consciousness, and it's about, I mean, sometimes I feel it's about having fear on the physical body. It's more about getting awareness on the multi-level we are and getting detached a lot. I mean, what is exactly the process here that I'm not 100% sure of that. Can you say something about that, please?
Yeah, I will try. There's a lot. There's like so much there that I would comment on. I would say, first off, this Christ consciousness, or the presence of, the consciousness we call Jesus. I know other people refer to it as Yeshua. I've heard other people, call him Sananda. Whatever the third density terminology we use to describe this Christ consciousness. Here's the thing, that is an actual, true, real existing consciousness. That is a real, actual being. I have had recent clients that I have worked with, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, oh, wow, this is a whole new, not a whole new presence, but just the consciousness of the one we call Jesus is very much real, and it does show up. And I think that it is, and this is a very carefully placed term, I think that consciousness is kind of different than what we find in the Bible. And I'm sorry, I might have just angered some people out there, but it has shown up differently, and it is honestly, it has shown up in much more of a true, real, absolute, resonant fashion outside of the context of what was written in that manuscript. I mean, also very much in the same way, but I believe that frequency is absolutely alive and existing. So when you have that experience early on, absolutely 100%, which is also why I think a lot of us that will encounter that consciousness inevitably do break away from the confines of that our archaic human religion structure, because anyway, that's a whole other can of worms. But
lot of wormholes.
yeah, that's a whole other. We and everyone also knows this at this stage. The God of the Old Testament is also not the same God of the New Testament.
Right,
We're talking about entirely. Wow. Yes. Oh yeah, these are entirely different things. But that said, and I don't even know where I was gonna go with that, but yeah, I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't just piss anybody off. But no, that is totally real. I think you are also being activated on a certain level. I think that there are consciousness or versions or just other beings, and we could even say ascended masters who are really showing up on a very interesting and beautiful level right now. And I've already lost the answer I was going to give you on that, so sorry.
Okay. Do you think that 666, what is described, has a chance to come in all people's timeline, or is that something where we can transform it?
Thank you. Okay, so the 666 mark of the beast. I believe that is also already being implemented. It is showing up on a number of levels. Some of you guys can go on Facebook and Google some people in America that are getting that little chip jammed into their finger, their hand, so they could interact. There's a bunch of other stuff about people that are already having this thing implanted. I believe that the transhumanism timeline, or rather the sort of artificially influence human decision to integrate with technology for the purpose of power or information or ability or whatever it is, I believe that is actually what we may interpret, in things like the Bible as the mark of the beast. I think we are also seeing it trickle down in a different form through the injections they want to give us to keep us safe from a certain thing that, is also not entirely real, because that also creates this interesting, what I have viewed as an actual cord that extends outside of the human DNA that also acts as very much a marker, or like an imprint, or we could even say, and make it even weirder, a sigil that gets placed over elements of the human energy body. And so the 666 concept, or the mark of the beast, is actually real, but it shows up, at least through my understanding, in many different varied forms, whereas essentially, once again, everyone, a timeline choice or a willingness to be sort of labeled, we could even say. But yeah.
So I had a thought of, okay, then get maybe plan B for 3.5 years, because if it stays only for 3.5 years, maybe
That could be true. That could be true. Yeah,
that is something that came last week. I have no idea how to manage that, but if you can only earn or buy anything and you don't have to, I don't know if it would be possible or if you're forced into it, but anyhow, that's some
I actually don't think that's going to be implemented, to be honest with you. I believe that part of what's happening right now, like literally the reason why you and I are having these types of conversations.
Right, that was the plan of the old timeline, right? And so we are trying to yes, wow, Matthew, wow.
And so maybe on some level, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but maybe on some level, if we continue to say, okay, well, I guess this is coming, damn, pretty soon I'm going to have to get this test or this shot so I can go back to work. On some level, that is us accepting or going, well, I guess that's how it is. And we've also seen it, you guys, not to get like political, but for those of you that have seen many people in authority suddenly kneeling, you are watching an actual energetic and actual gesture of compliance and control and literal subservience to a previously placed frequency. It's like you're watching people go, I will submit to you. What are they submitting to is the question. But anyway, go ahead.
It's a question. It's a black magic question mark. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, so were you asking? Is that a?
Yeah. I mean, I think so, but I put it here as a question because, if we see who is behind that, certain organizations, it becomes very interesting. For me, I was never very interested in politics or where the money flows. But recently, the last half a year, I mean, wow, I spent my nights researching so much. I mean, I couldn't stop. It was like, wow. One information after another, and if you follow the money, if you Google up certain links and certain things, you'll be so amazed. So guys, do your research. It's also God gave a brain to us and eyes to see and ears to hear, and we have to use them, and it's very important to sometimes to get confirmation of what we already instinctively feel. So please don't be afraid to go into the rabbit holes, right? I have a beautiful question also. What is your YouTube channel, Matthew?
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah, I see it there. Yes, thank you. It is the School of Multidimensional Intuition. The School of Multidimensional Intuition. You can also check out my website, rememberyourmission.com. I'm pretty sure there's a link to YouTube on there now. But yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so so be in touch with your intuition. I think that is something, it's also one of the things you really saying here. And I want to ask you, what are you feeling is the biggest information you want to give to people right now? I mean, you already gave the biggest information. We are an amazing timeline right now. We have this possibility of turning, and for me personally, it doesn't feel very comfortable in some levels. I also feel like certain decisions which are not just very easy to do. I mean, for me personally, I feel also it has a lot to do with standing to my truth no matter what, to stay in certain boundaries. So any more maybe you can say about that for people to help in this time of coming in your own truth and staying in your own truth?
Yeah, I would say the thing that has helped me probably maintain what I call energetic sovereignty is, and this is just Matthew's own like particular niche. Other people are going to have their own, but for me, it has been about understanding, developing, and clearing our energetic anatomy, the non-physical structures in the human body. For those of you that were watching earlier, I was talking about how there's an additional layer that is activating on your organs right now. Actually, when I get technical, every element of your body is actually activating on an additional layer, meaning that there's an additional purpose, there's an additional frequency, there's an additional emotion, there's even an intuitive frequency that exists within each of our organs that is activating right now. And so I would say for those that are trying to tap into multidimensionality or wondering like, how do I figure out what my mission even is or what I'm supposed to be doing right now? I believe it is, like I said earlier, not only detoxing the human body, but learning about our non-physical anatomy, what they actually do, how they actually work, what's really going on in there. Because in this fourth density shift, those are the areas of the human body that are the most active and critical, especially for the unseen hidden influences and forces that are now operating on such an unprecedented level that basically we're generating multidimensional awareness by learning about those non-physical structures. And so what I teach is a method and a modality toward really clearing the human energy body. And I say I'm very emphatic about that because I believe it works. But I also tell people that I am not the only person in the world that does this. There are many others. And so I would say the most important thing for people to start working with is detoxing the body, learning about the non-physical structures, understanding the elements of ourselves that keep us held into a fear, control, or hypervigilance frequency. No matter what thing you turn on, whether you look on social media or TV or the radio right now, if you hold on longer than 5 minutes, you will inevitably be faced with some sort of a fear-mongering, a negativity, a confrontational program, or something that will be designed to teach you about how you are doing something wrong or how you need to comply or just give in to a different wavelength, a different idea. I believe that what we need to do is generate awareness in our human body so that we can understand when those frequencies and those ideas and those programs are coming in, and then instantly begin to deflect it. And so, you know, I realize I probably already said this a few times, but it really is about generating awareness. And ultimately, I think just making that real choice to shift away from that third density realm. And anyway, I'll just keep rambling on.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Matthew, for all your time and all your work. And it was an amazing 1.5 hours with you. And I love to invite you back here. It's,
thank you.
Yeah, and I'm also discovering all this thing with the technical thing that was so new for me. And I'm like, also, I'm like, wow, it feels for me right now, I'm in a live fantasy movie. I mean, I had many experiences over the years, but right now the intensity of this is very strong. So normally there are some breaks in that, but right now it's like, wow. And so for me, it becomes more and more amazing what kind of different levels of consciousness are there and lives people live in different programs. So that is, I think, also something which amazes me, but also frightens me a little bit. I mean, it's kind of, I'm living in another world, you know, and they living in another world, or most people living in another world. And same time, I see the souls, I see the hearts, I love everybody. And from that love, I sometimes feel I want to shake and say, please wake up. But, you know, it's like that. It seems to me that the magic, or however we want to call it, magic or matrix, is so deep that it takes a lot of push to break that egg open. So maybe some words on that at the end from you, dear Matthew.
I would say that really everyone right now, if you end up finding this here broadcast, no matter how many people see it, it was for a reason. It was no mistake. If there's one thing I've learned about the work that I'm doing, and probably you as well, just because we happen to connect in the physical realm, is that there are people that are being summoned, they're being called to action, they're being drawn towards certain soul groups or alliances, or, you know, whatever it is right now. It's going to be for a very special reason. It's not fake anymore. Yes, we are living in an age of human existence in which life really does begin to turn very much like a fantasy movie. It does very much begin to turn into a sci-fi movie. And some of the reasons why we were shown those sci-fi and fantasy movies is because events like this were literally being loaded into our bodies so that we would create them unconsciously, for better or worse, in the physical realm. And so I guess I would sort of wrap up by saying, if you're one of the people that found this frequency, if you found this strange broadcast and you're telling yourself, you know, I know there's something more for me to do right now. I know that there's this mission or this assignment. I know what these people are talking about. And even though I don't, you know, none of us will know exactly what it is we're talking about. They will feel this frequency and they will know that they have a place there. And so I would say, you know, if you're one of those people, please look into what we are creating and what we're doing. You can, you know, join the classes that we're doing. We have another one starting on June 28th here. It's all online, so people get a recording. Some people in other parts of the world are unable to make it for the live class, so they watch later on. But this might sound crazy, but we're kind of building an army. We're building an
Beautiful.
army of awakened individuals that have the ability to see truth, to understand their multidimensionality, and to be like you saw, you know, in that dream or those experiences you had years ago, to be those ones that are going to be walking through the madness and like lifting people up. All those people that are like, oh, like down in the world and stuck and like oppressed by this energy, those beings that are drawn to this frequency, you guys, we are the ones that chose to activate during this specific time period so that we could hold this frequency and pull everybody up out of this craziness. And so for those that are watching, you know, please do join us. You can go to my website, you can go to our YouTube, the School of Multidimensional Intuition. I also have an actual online educational portal kind of thing that's opening up. It's on Vimeo. And it's also called the School of, or rather, I believe it's called Remember Your Mission, I believe, on Vimeo as well. And what we're doing is we're uploading some courses that I've created and done in the past. We have one we put up a couple weeks ago called Negative Energetic Manifestations and What We Can Do About Them. And what it is like a 2-day energy clearing and presentation in which we talk about, you know, things like demons, implantation, soul contracts, mind viruses, and then we go through this 2-day, or really just 2-session process if you watch them in, you know, the same day, where we clear multiple layers. It's like an old world construct and then a new world construct from the body. And I also have a intuitive activation kind of course that I think in the coming days will hopefully be available on Vimeo as well, that people can take part in. But there's a lot of options, you guys. I'm not the only one that's doing this right now, but really, for those of you guys that are watching, and I'll end with this, like, you truly have a mission here. There is an assignment, and you are entering in the next stage of your consciousness. This is very much real, and this is going to sound cheesy for some of you guys, but, and I think you've had this as well. But it's almost like that scene in the movie, everyone, where, you know, the main character gets this knock on the door, and it's like, knock, knock, knock. So Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, like, your country needs you, like your world needs you, your people need you, and it's time for you to come back. It's time for you to come back into action. So I feel very emotional giving that message. But
I'm too. I'm having tears in my eyes the whole time. You also,
at
wow.
the stage in which that is happening for people right now, and so I'm deeply honored to be able to share that message.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're spreading a lot of love right now, and a lot of beautiful vibration. And thank you so much. And please, let's stay in touch, Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love
to. Thank you for your work and your hard work and your being. And
Thank you. Thank you for noticing. Thank you for noticing. Yeah, I truly appreciate it. I have reached out to many people in this like community over the past couple of years. And I've seen other people that kind of do what I do, and they're like, I've been trying to talk to people and tell people about it. And you know, it takes a while for like you really have to stick it out. And so I honor you for being willing to say, hey, you know what? I don't know, something makes sense here. Maybe we should talk about it.
Absolutely. You know? I felt it right away. I felt like, oh, here is some very awakened soul, and I really, he is special in his work, and not special on the ego, you know. It's not that we talk about that, but there's a soul awakening, there are different steps, and so we cannot be in the time of where blind is helping the blind. So we have to be real and with our experiences, and I'm sure you know, and many of the awakening know it's not always easy, as the decisions you had to do with your, you know, changing your life. I mean, there's so many tests on the way. So if you want to help people, you have to stay in your truth. And that is what I feel, with souls many times, if they are really connected there or not. And with you, I felt it very strongly. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
I love to have to invite you here again soon. So I'm also very amazed of what the next journey will be, and the timelines, and it makes much sense right now, a lot of things. And thank you so much again. So
absolutely. It is an honor.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
So